So this has been called the story of Prince Harry, Meghan, the paparazzi, and a chaotic night in Manhattan. And it has kicked up a huge amount of controversy on the internet this week. So on Tuesday night local time, Harry and Meghan were reportedly involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. At least that's according to an unnamed spokesperson for the couple when the story broke on Wednesday. This instantly made headlines around the world alongside comparisons to Diana's death, amid reports that a member of the couple's security team said the episode, quote, could have been fatal. So we have a grab here from Omid Scobie, who is a royal reporter and trusted source of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This is the version of events he shared with American ABC News, including his take on whether or not it was actually a chase.
It sort of turned into this very aggressive game of cat and mouse with Harry and Meghan right at the middle of it. And we saw, despite how great their security is, and they do have one of the best teams in the business, they weren't able to completely outsmart some of those photographers that were desperate to capture some sort of exclusive moment.
ABC police sources telling us they were escorting the couple when they left. They say that photographers on bicycles were seen, but according to authorities, it was not the kind of wild caravan described by Harry and Meghan's team. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we hear the words chase and we assume that it was some kind of Fast and the Furious style sort of hot pursuit through the streets of Manhattan. Of course, as we know, it's a city that crawls very slowly on those streets. But it didn't change the fact that they were at many times followed by sort of 6, 7, 8 different photographers, different agencies, all desperate to capture at least some sort of exclusive moment with the couple, but also find out where they were staying. I think it really shows the sort of extent that photographers will go to get that exclusive image. Despite whether the motorcade or the cars that they were in were moving fast or slow, it doesn't change the fact that this was an aggressive encounter with a number of photographers on different modes of transport, bikes, motorbikes, and cars.
This is really difficult because I'm team nobody in this. I don't want to say I'm team paparazzi because I think that the paparazzi industry is awful. I also don't want to underplay the distress that ever being followed in a car by paparazzi or even just encountering paparazzi is for someone who lost their mother like that. And I think that when you have experienced trauma, sometimes you can have an overblown response to something that's not as consequential as it feels. So I'm sure for Harry, and for Meghan, it felt like it was potentially catastrophic. And he felt threatened and he was traumatized by it and all of those things. But when you look at the actual facts, because of course I read it and went, oh my goodness, that sounds terrible. How can that happen? As well as thinking, hang on, you can't really have a 2-hour high-speed chase through Manhattan because Manhattan's not that big and also there's a lot of traffic. So what happened is that they were at this event, a very public event where Meghan received an award for the Women of Vision presented by Gloria Steinem. You might have seen images of her in a gold dress. It was very public. She gave a speech. Everybody knew they were there. They posed for photographs with her mother. And then at around 10 to 10, they left the theatre to return to the Upper East Side where they were staying. We don't know where they were staying. They say, I think they were staying with friends. That's what law enforcement officials have said. And this is all from the New York Times, who is completely impartial in this situation, right? Because the police have said something and the couple have said something. There were lots of paparazzi outside the event, of course. Everyone knew she was going to be there. It was a public event. They left in a big SUV, a big private security vehicle with a police escort that was provided by New York. They were driven around then for about an hour trying to shake the paparazzi because they didn't want the paparazzi to follow them and find out where they lived. So I understand that, but the fact that they drove around and then they went to a police station to say, we want these people to stop following us. Then they decided to hail a taxi to try to, have a decoy. The taxi driver was a little bit bemused. He then got stuck behind a garbage truck. And so they were in traffic. And then photographers came and tried to take photos through the window, which I understand. Then he drove them back to the police station, and then they got back into their security vehicle, their big SUV, and then the police blocked off all the traffic in the area and then provided them with another police escort to get them to their place and stopped paparazzi from following them. So Holly, what's going on? Because to me, that is kind of what it is to be famous, right? But I understand why Harry found it distressing, but why all the releasing statements, etc.?
Harry is increasingly coming across like a person unhealthily obsessed, right? If you've read his book, and we have, I can't vouch for Elfie. She's probably got better things to do. But
I have not read the book. I'm so
Mia
sorry.
and I spent our Januaries very deep in despair.
Elfie, it's an official out loud text.
Oh, God. Well, I won't see you here next week.
It is not a mystery that he hates the paparazzi. He also is absolutely furious that his security got pulled by his family, because back when they moved to LA, came and they'd made the now famous Megxit decision to pull out. He and Meghan, and this is all spelled out in the book from his mouth, they really, really expected that their royal security would continue, and they were told by their then grandma, by Harry's then grandma, and then the king, no, we're not paying for that. If you're not going to be working royals, we're not going to pay for that. And Harry, in his book, spelled out that he and Megs then sat down and did the maths on what it would cost them to have the kind of security that they needed. Now, bear in mind that millionaires and billionaires and Kardashians and all the things, they have round the clock 24/7 security with them all the time, and they pay for it themselves, right? So the fundamental question here that Harry is wrestling with is kind of, I didn't choose this life, it chose me, and this is a cost that I have to wear. And he would argue, and he kind of has done, I think, that this is one of the reasons why he needed to make so much money from his book, from his deals, from all the things, is because he has to pay for he and Megs to be safe. Therefore, he is really invested in proving that they need that. He is currently suing, as well as many news organisations, the UK Home Office in Britain for refusing to provide him with security free of charge or even that he could pay for privately when he and Meghan go to Britain. He's suing the Home Office about it. So he has a massive dog in this fight. It is so important to Harry to illustrate all the time that this is life or death for him. And in this situation, it seems like it's backfired and you could argue that they could just never do anything right in the eyes of the media. But also the facts of the case, as you've said, Mia, spelled out by players like the New York Times who aren't being sued by the Sussexes and don't have a dog in this fight, suggest that their lives were not in danger, that this was not a high-speed chase. This was just an irritation of being famous people going to a public event and people wanting to take pictures of you. I also question, what the hell do the paparazzi want pictures of? I know they want to find out where they're staying, but they've just posed for an hour at the party where Meg's got her award. So it seems to me that Harry and Meghan, but I would say much more Harry than Meghan, is very invested in making it clear how hunted, how persecuted, and how unsafe they are at all times, because he wants to make the point that his family threw him to the dogs.
Two other points of data that are worth noting. One is that the royal family have an agreement after Diana, and I think even prior, that they will not, the paparazzi will not photograph them. That's why we don't see those kinds of photos of Prince William, Princess Kate, the King. We don't see them, we never have, because there is an understanding, particularly after what happened with Diana, that just won't happen. So you have, by being a working royal, you have a degree of protection that Harry wants, and he wants his family to pay for it, but he doesn't want to be a working royal. He wants to be able to earn money privately. And the second data point that I would make is that he's living a public life. He's choosing to be a famous person, right? So the part where he's a royal, he can't do anything about that because he was born into it. And that's his complaint, that because he was born into it, he should be afforded protection all the time. But the non-working royals who live private lives, like Princess Anne's children, for example, they are not at public events. They are not celebrities. They don't write tell-all books. So they are not famous. So they are not stalked by the paparazzi. So it's like, I don't ever want to sound like I'm defending the paparazzi, because I'm not. But then the third thing that I wanted to say, and I know I said there's only two, but the fact that Ahmed Scobie came out and said at the end of that interview, which we didn't play, but he said something that, he, you know, is supposedly a journalist, but he's actually just the unofficial spokesperson for the Sussexes. And he said, what is so distressing to the Duke of Sussex, whatever he's called, Prince Harry, is that he cannot believe that his father and his brother have not rung to check that he is okay. Now, the only person that knows that is Harry. So he's then obviously said, I want that out in the world, that my brother and my dad didn't call me, and it's not fair. And my heart breaks a little bit like that, because he's still the little boy that lost his mum. And it's like, even with everything I've done, my dad and my brother didn't care that I nearly died, but he didn't. Like, maybe he nearly got his photo taken.
I think he's a bit embarrassed. And Elfie, I do want to hear what you think, because I know you're not as deep up to your eyeballs in this as we are. But I think they'll be embarrassed today, because I think that as much as he is invested in making this point, and you're so right, Mia, that stuck out to me so much, him saying they didn't call to check on me, and you're like, why would they after everything you've put them through? Yeah. Why would they? But also, I think he'll be a bit embarrassed, because all those details about them going to the police, then their security hailing a cab. Now, the professional security that the press have been talking to in Britain said that's a terrible idea. You would never do that. If the security knew what they were doing, they would never just, do you want a fare to a random taxi driver? Like, it's not how it works. So it's all a bit mortifying for them. Elfie, what do you think?
Oh, God. Holly, you know that I am not a person who is interested in the royals. I don't hate the royals. I nothing the royals. I feel literally nothing in my heart about them. But what I will say about this, like from the perspective of somebody who works in the media and commentates on these kind of stories, I think that when these sort of things happen, you kind of have to fall on one side of the fence, right? So there would be the side of the fence here that gives credence to the story, who empathizes with Harry and Meghan, who says, that's fair enough, you felt violated, you felt threatened. And the other side of the fence seems to be these people who are questioning that, but then also involved in that circle of people are those who are making fun of them, who are, you know, posting videos online, posting videos on TikTok, laughing at what has happened. And I just think that in general, I like to take the more cautious, empathetic approach, because I do feel like ultimately you want to fall on the right side of history with these sort of things. And if something does happen in the future, if they do feel more threatened, if things escalate, then the people who are laughing at them are going to feel really shitty about that. Yeah. And so I would just prefer to say, okay, you felt threatened. And like Mia said, you know, there's a lot of trauma history involved there. Fine. Like, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. And I think that you just have to choose that.
I have to say that I've actually felt very sorry for it. Was interesting how immediately in that statement, and also across quite a lot of social media, they're saying, don't look at the pictures. You know, the pictures that were taken. Don't fuel the economy, the paparazzi economy, by looking at those pictures. And that's an argument I make quite often, that if we're serious about these things, don't look at the pictures. But I did accidentally see one of these pictures, Elfie, I have to admit, of them in the back of the taxi. And I really feel sorry for Meghan. Like, I really feel sorry for her, because my firm belief on this is Harry's fight. He is obsessed. And he's obsessed with protecting her. Mia's talked about this before. He's obsessed with protecting her. He's obsessed with the same thing not happening to his family, which is so understandable. But I almost feel like she's just sitting there like, far out. Like, could this all just die down? And I feel like he's fueling it.
Yeah. And Holly, wouldn't you say, and also Elfie, that by releasing this statement, saying they were nearly, you know, that it was a near catastrophic car chase, that was the words of the couple, that's fairly inflammatory. So they, by saying that, immediately raised the value of these pictures and immediately turned this into a thing, whereas nobody would have seen them. So is it a bit counterproductive?
Yeah, it's probably a fair point, yeah. Although I would say that, I mean, Meghan's mum was in the cab as well, right? That's the person who I feel most sorry for in this situation.
She's been swept up. Because the thing is royal watchers, people who are interested, were just happy that they'd got a glimpse of Meghan. We talked about how I wrote a piece about how Meghan's been in strategic hiding until the coronation. And now she can kind of start coming out. And so at this event, and she was looking incredible in that dress, and Harry's there and her mum's there, and everybody was happy to have seen them. And then this to happen immediately afterwards, it's just, it's like nothing can go right for them at the moment.
Or is it an own goal?